Hello there, and today we're doing a little bit of a different live session. Today I'm going to share a little bit of my story. I've had several people ask me this, and it's really a hard story to tell. So I had to work up the nerve to do this, but today I wanted to share my story of living with a chronic disease and dysautonomia. And a big part of that is because this is why I do what I do, what drives me to do what I do here at Reactive, and also in our memberships online. So bear with me because it's not what I normally do. It's a lot easier to talk about a research study or to interview someone else than to talk about myself. I have like my fidgets here because I'm very, very nervous. So I'm just being really honest about that. And if we haven't met, my name is Julie Hirschberg, and I am a neurologic physical therapist. And I was realizing the other day, I've been a neuro PT for a very, very long time. So I graduated physical therapy school in 2002. So, gosh, that makes it 23 years. And a lot of my story here kind of goes back to that time as an early physical therapist. Sue, thank you so much for joining and for the encouraging words as well. I'm grateful for the people I get to be with. It's a large reason why I said I really do want to share my story, because many of you have shared your story with me and to many other people, right? So I want to thank you, many of you, for sharing their stories. Like Stella, thanks so much, Stella, for being here. So I want to go back. I was introducing myself. I got sidetracked, but I am the founder and owner of Reactive Therapy and Wellness. I'm in the Los Angeles area, but also do a lot of outreach and advocacy online and across the world for chronic disease, for neurologic disorders. So I wanted to share this story, my own health journey story, because many people have asked me. And because just recently we started a membership program online for people with chronic illnesses and neurologic disorders, for particularly for people with zebra conditions like hypermobility and dysautonomia. And such a big part of the why I started that is because this was something I did not have when I was diagnosed. So, and really could have used, right? So let me start back at the beginning. And I think, like many of you, when I look back over my lifetime, starting as a young kid, I can look back and see like, oh my gosh, yeah, I was that kid that really struggled. I played all kinds of sports and I was always the one overheating and throwing up. And I look back at that and go, oh, maybe I did have some dysautonomia as a kid. But really it was in high school and in college where I really started to have some weird symptoms. I had a few things happen in my childhood as well, like whole week incidences of autonomic symptoms, right? I can remember one particular week when I was 10 where I'd just be like nonstop throwing up for a week for no reason. And again, as I said, constantly overheating, and really, gosh, it was a real struggle to stay active that way, right? Like, I gotta tell you, I hated running, and I laugh at this because I now love running, and I signed up for my next marathon, but I absolutely hated running. And I also played soccer. It was a terrible, terrible match. So anyway, going back to when I was, in late high school and early college, I experienced really extreme fatigue and exhaustion. And particularly, I can remember actually dating my husband or hanging out with my friends, and I'd just be like horizontal, fall asleep on the couch almost every single night. And looking back, I didn't really think anything of it. Also didn't really tell anybody. This is part of my not so healthy nature with most things, is to not ask for help and not tell people. And so I just kind of lived with that. And it wasn't until I was in my very first job out of residency. So I went to PT school, and then I did a residency program in neurology out here at USC and Rancho Los Amigos. And then once I graduated for that, I took my first job. I took a job at the community hospital in inpatient rehab. I loved it. It was such a dream job. And I started running with a colleague of mine. I loved that too. And I started having weird symptoms. Like I'd wake up in the morning with a lot of pain and stiffness, and I couldn't walk on my feet. I remember I would be kind of like crawling around or tiptoeing around. I also had a lot of difficulty using my hands. This was very unusual for me. And I'm in a job in the hospital where I'm on my feet all of the time, and I'm using my hands all of the time because I'm a physical therapist. So what I did is I went to my colleague who is a physical therapist, and I said, I think I hurt myself running. I think I have like a hip injury or a foot injury or something. And he did a very thorough evaluation. He's like, this is not an injury. You have something systemically happening in your body. And he actually told me at the time, like, I think you might have some sort of autoimmune condition or arthritis. And he referred me to a doctor. I thank God for this physical therapist all of the time. First, he took a ton of time to evaluate me and really point out these patterns of symptoms that were occurring. This is why everybody should have a great physical therapist in their life. But I also just really feel like this person kind of saved my life because he pointed me in the direction, and I went to a physician. And I went to my primary physician. They ran a lot of tests. And that person sent me to a specialist who ran a lot of tests. I know this is a story for many people, but I did go to a rheumatologist, and I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis based on my lab work. And this was the start of a medical journey that was not so favorable, I have to say. And I have shared this story before, but that rheumatologist basically said, stop running. This is not healthy for you, and you should never run again. He also said that I should... I was a young woman at that time. I believe I was 26 or 27. And he said, you're probably going to have kids. That's okay, but you cannot breastfeed them. And because you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer for having kids. And because the medication that you take when you're diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis is quite toxic to pregnancy and to kids. And I, even as a medical professional, I didn't question that. I took that information and honestly let it really taint me for a long time. So I also will tell you, somebody asked me about this actually in our workshop last week. They asked me, what are illness beliefs? And so I have to tell this story. Illness beliefs are things that you believe about a disorder, right? And they come from a lot of places. Well, this doctor really shaped how I thought of rheumatoid arthritis, right? He said, like, you will have foot and hand deformities. And I worked on inpatient rehab with people with really late stages of rheumatoid arthritis who had multiple surgeries and deformities and couldn't feed themselves, couldn't walk. They were in a wheelchair. I saw the worst of the worst in inpatient rehab. And the doctor really kind of set that up for me, like, this is your pathway. And I was terrified. And this is really hard to share, actually, because I saw that for myself. I saw that would be my pathway. And for a while, and I would say it was probably at least a couple of years, and if not more, it extended for quite a long time, that I kept that picture of what was going to happen to me. And I also, by the way, kept that to myself. I didn't want to burden anybody. It's kind of like a cultural lifetime of not asking for help. And I also kept any pain or fatigue or exhaustion to myself. I didn't want to burden people. And I stopped running, right? I really shifted my physical activity. Now, I am a person that does really like need to move and like to move. I did do other things, thank goodness. But I let that person really shape my beliefs about what was to come. So when this person, by the way, last week asked me about illness beliefs, it's not just that those beliefs become real. It's not that you're making your disease worse, but I will say that vision of what was coming for me really shaped what I was doing with my life. Now, in that moment, as I was diagnosed, I still had a really hard time walking and using my hands. I took some time off of work. I did a reduced duty so that I had more administrative time. Very, very thankful to my work situation that could shift for me while I was getting this under control, because the medications that you take can take a while to work. So fast forward to having kids. So I had my first kid. I guess it was about 5 or 6 years after that initial diagnosis. I can remember being terrified to go off of medications because the medications have been helpful. They had limited symptoms. They had limited flares for me. But then you have to go completely off of them for a long period of time before having kids. And I can remember I went off medications, and my husband and I planned a trip. We planned a surfing trip down to Central America where we were going to essentially kind of backpack our way down the coast and surf. And I was flared almost the entire time. Thankfully, so helpful to be in the warm waters of Central America, but not the best conditions really to be doing a trip through Central America. But we did it and survived. And I also, by the way, didn't really say anything about my symptoms. I know that I expressed I was scared of having these symptoms because I was off medication, but didn't really say anything. And then it took us a while to get pregnant. I know many of my colleagues and friends have felt that as well. And that was also really scary because that was more time off of medication, time that my doctor said I didn't really have. And gosh, I look back, if only I had had a different doctor, how much different that experience would have been. I wouldn't have been so scared, for sure. So I, hooray, I have 2 teenagers now, and I got pregnant. And felt amazing. Many autoimmune conditions can go into remission during pregnancy. I felt the best I had in my entire life, which says a lot for how unmanaged my rheumatoid arthritis had been. But I felt awesome. And I think had I not had that severe, so I had 2 kids, had really severe flares after the pregnancy, kept those things hidden and to myself, even though I couldn't even use my hands to change diapers in the middle of the night. It was worse. It was worse as in rheumatoid arthritis, really, really bad in the morning, really bad in the middle of the night. And I struggled to use my hands and didn't tell anybody about it, which is just looking back, if I had just shared an inkling of the amount of pain or exhaustion that I have been in, it would have just been so nice to have some help. It would have been so nice not to bear it alone. And I think that I see that in so many people that I talk to. We're all so afraid to become a burden to somebody. We're used to being the strong person, maybe, the person that kind of has it all together, can do all of the things, and can find it really, really hard to reach out for help. And I did. I really suffered alone for decades, really, with symptoms that I didn't share with anybody. And at last, right, I ended up with major flares of symptoms, particularly after my second child. And so much so that the arthritis attacked my jaw. My jaw got stuck open, and I couldn't chew. And as you can imagine, it was really painful. And that finally led me to get some help. So in a way, thankful for that, leading me to finally say, you know what, this is really problematic and so very painful. I need to get help. Betsaida is here. Yeah, Betsaida, we were working together at this time. I was working on a research study at this time for people post-stroke, a very intensive hands-on program of locomotor training, and painful through all of it. Betsaida, you probably did not know, because again, I did not share this level of pain with anybody, and had a very hands-on job that was very, very painful. So thankful for a really severe flare, in retrospect, that because I insisted on breastfeeding my kids. So again, this was something that my doctor said, no, you shouldn't do this. And I did. And I did have a flare that brought me to physical therapy. Thank goodness. And it was through physical therapy. I got fabulous physical therapy at USC by some of my colleagues who are specialists in the jaw, for example, who referred me to specialist for jaw issues. I ended up, by the way, having to get 3 more years of braces so my teeth can come together again. That was also such a pain, but worth it because I didn't have to have surgery. But I also met another physical therapist, Annie Austin, who was at USC at the time. And I felt like a wreck. Right? So I was a brand new mom of my second baby. I was exhausted. I was in a flare. I couldn't barely get up from the floor at all holding a baby. And I can remember going to her and just so shook up. Like, what happened to me? I used to be strong and I can't get up off the floor. I'm in so much pain. I'm exhausted. And Annie just so beautifully, just kind of almost like figuratively took me in her arms and coached me back to wellness, one teeny tiny step at a time. So we started some gentle strengthening. We moved from supine to more challenging things. But I think one of the biggest things is she really believed in me, and she embraced that I was asking for help, knowing how hard that was for me to do. And it was through that experience then that I started getting my physical strength back, and so very thankful for physical therapy for that. And fast forward a few years, I started working on my mental health. And again, very thankful for the gift of children that can bring to light some of my own things that I have been struggling with my whole life. And I started very simply with a class, a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. It's an 8-week course put on by a lovely group here in LA, but it's an extremely research evidence-based class on mindfulness. And I started with that. And then I started with therapy. We had family therapy. We had individual therapy. And really understanding some of the patterns that I had assumed, for example, like I shouldn't ask for help, like I should suffer by myself, like maybe I don't even deserve help. And I'm just being really truthful for you that these were things that I was struggling with, and they were limiting my physical well-being, and my whole life, and my life with my kids and my husband and my family. So that journey then kind of leads me to present day. And I will tell you, just within the last couple of years has been a journey with dysautonomia, which really goes back to childhood for sure, as I see a lot of autonomic things, but most recently that I have extremely low blood pressure and orthostatic intolerance, and orthostatic hypotension, and I'm undergoing a workup, just like many of my clients, with cardiology. I've been to kind of every specialist now, and it's actually been a really great journey, because I know what I need to ask for. I know what I need to advocate for. And I can go to the physicians that I know are really good with these things, right? So I'm currently, you can't see it here, but maybe you can see the outline of it. I've got my 2 weeks of cardiac monitoring going on right now, and finishing the pieces. They kind of just, at this point, it's some sort of dysautonomia. But I've had several instances of fainting and very low blood pressure, which leaves my brain not feeling so great. And I know from many of my clients who have lived with this as well, it's something that needs to be managed, and it needs attention. And I will say, maybe for the first time in my life as well, I'm asking for help. And asking for help for me also means I'm actually going to the doctor, that I don't have to do this on my own. And even though I might even have some expertise in this realm, it has been really, really helpful shift for me to reach out for help, and to rely on the expertise of experts. And I see Stella here saying, I start my 2 weeks on Thursday. Stella, I gotta tell you, oh my gosh, itchy tape feeling, that I have a rash on myself from this tape. Not unusual. I have pretty sensitive skin, but worth it. I'm just going, I'm glad somebody's going to look at this, right? And Stella is saying you overcame and saved your own life in order to save so many others. You put in the work for yourself so we can all reap the benefits. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for supporting me in this journey. And sorry. Lost my headphone there, and hopefully it came back on. So I give you a long version of the story. This is a story now that's over 20 years of living with a chronic disease. Oh, now I didn't tell you kind of the middle part of the rheumatoid arthritis story. After I met the physical therapist, and started getting back some of my physical health. After I breastfed my kids for as long as they wanted to, I was able to get back on medication, right? And medications for rheumatoid arthritis have really evolved. So I was on an injectable medication that I can inject myself every couple of weeks, and it was really helpful in my symptoms. I lived really well with that. Then my mom got lymphoma. And the side effect of a lot of the medications for rheumatoid arthritis is lymphoma. And so now with this family history, my now new rheumatologist, who was amazing, said, can we get you off of this? And so we did. We transitioned to an oral medication. And then actually, I was doing so well, we transitioned off of medication. And he said I'm one of the only, but people that have been able to do this. But I shared with him what I was doing lifestyle wise to help manage my symptoms. I would notice certain foods would trigger a flare, so I took them out. I noticed a really high stress would trigger or worsen my symptoms. And so I increased how much I was going to work with a psychologist. For a while, I was doing 2 to 3 times a week with psychology. So I just increased that. I increased a lot of my healthy habits of exercise, of social things with friends and family. I've always been like needing a lot of sleep, always been an 8 to 9 hour person. And I just became even more like every single night I'm getting 8 to 9 hours. I just really transformed all of the lifestyle pieces that I could to manage an autoimmune condition. So for me, I know these are really individual. It was diet and lifestyle. And those lifestyle pieces included psychotherapy, included stress management, included my energy and pacing through the day. It included my sleep. Those were really big pieces. Now, I do wish, looking back, I had an OT to help me refine those things. I did a lot of figuring of that on my own, and that is what our OT team does so well. But at this point, with my rheumatoid arthritis, it's essentially in remission. And I don't have to take medication. I do need to manage the lifestyle pieces. If I have days of many days of really poor sleep, I will have a flare of symptoms. If I have many days where the stress is just really out of control, and sometimes you just can't, like when my mom died, I was in a total flare of my symptoms. There just wasn't much I could do about that level of stress and grief that occurred in my life. But for the most part, I know what I need to do to manage it. So now I'm moving forward to where I am now. This is a big part of my why with re+active. I wanted a place where people would feel heard, that they wouldn't be told, oh, don't do that anymore, and instead say, let's find a healthy way to do it together, no matter what the diagnosis, and further on, having all of those pieces together, right? The physical therapy part, the occupational therapy, the real lifestyle component of things, the psychology that has truly transformed my life, my mindset, and really how I'm living in relationship with others. The fitness and wellness side of things. And then, so that's what I did. I started re+active 13 years ago, and we've been doing that ever since. And really, it's grown into what I think would have been the perfect thing for me when I was first diagnosed. I wish I had what re+active is now. I wouldn't have wandered, I think, for a good 10 to 15 years of trying to figure it out on my own. That's a lot of time lost. And now, as we launched just this week, our membership for people with zebra conditions, and that is people with hypermobility, people with dysautonomia, people with disorders like mast cell activation syndrome, people with chronic fatigue syndrome. Fatigue is such a huge component of autoimmune conditions. As we have launched that this week, this is something I wish I had. I wish I had this when I first was diagnosed. I wish I had access to experts who understand disorders, understand complicated things like fatigue, and who I could ask questions of, and that I could have resources and be around others who were struggling with similar things, and that I could I could learn from them, both the experts and the other people, that I could have classes that gently guide me to exercise. Oh gosh, speaking of classes, I totally left out one of the biggest things that was really helpful for me in the midst of flares and when I was first diagnosed, which was yoga. I was the anti-yogi. I was the person that was like, no, if I'm going to do yoga, it's going to be speed yoga. I had terrible time slowing down. I struggled with breath work. I found it super boring. And one of my friends was like, well, let's just do it. It'll be fun. And oh my gosh, I'm so thankful I haven't turned back. So I've been doing yoga for over, gosh, it's almost been 25 years now. And that was also something that truly saved part of my life, especially my physical body. When I started yoga, I don't know if any of you are at this place, I couldn't even bend my knee past 90 degrees. I was so very swollen. So actually doing yoga was hard and felt really terrible initially, to be honest. But it was eye-opening to me about how much my body had really gotten, it just had stiffened up from the arthritis, and I didn't really realize it. So having the yoga, having mindful movement, having all of those pieces in one place. When we started working on this membership, Naoya and I, which it's been like a couple of years in the making, and we just launched it this week, I was thinking about all of the things I wish I had had. And those are all of the things that we get to share and put together into this membership. And my personal story, my personal struggles through a lifetime of living and managing. And now, I truly feel like I can live well with a chronic disease. And, like I said, I'm deep in marathon training right now. I'm running my next marathon in June, and that doctor told me to never run again. And I think quite frankly, well, one, he was wrong, but running is something that's been really helpful for me to manage my symptoms and live well. Now, I'm not recommending running for everybody, certainly. But I would have thought I never recommended running for me either. I was that kid that was the last runner, the one that was throwing up. It was an awful experience for me growing up. But now I know what I need. I know I need to run early in the morning. I know I need to be super cool. I know I need to have good breath while I'm running. I know it needs to be fun with my friends. So I know what I need so I can do what I love. And that's exactly why I started re+active. That's why we do what we do now, because I don't want people to go at it alone like I did. I don't look back at that and go, ooh, I was strong. I look back at that and go, ooh, I missed out on a lot of support and help that I could have gotten. And I'm so incredibly proud that this is what re+active gets to do. And I really just want to spread the word to other clinicians, to other people living with a chronic illness, that there is hope, that there is support for you, that there is resources, and most importantly, that you don't have to do it alone. I wish I had heard that message. So that is why I'm here, and I have just killed the heck out of my fidget toy while talking to you, because this has been really hard for me to share a very personal story. And as you know now, how much I don't like to tell people that that this is what I live with, because it's still very hard for me to accept support and accept help. I'm working on it in therapy. So yeah, maybe even this is part of therapy. Colby says, I know what I need so I can do what I love. Yeah, it is so powerful, Colby. sometimes it's just a little bit of like education and knowledge, right? And sometimes, like I think in my own case, even as a physical therapist that does this all the time, I needed somebody like kind of from the outside too, right? I needed to not just figure it all out by myself, but kind of like have a little coach or a guide for me. And I did find that in physical therapy. Julia says, thank you so much for sharing your story and creating Reactive. Oh, Julia, Colby, really, anyone here whose life I've just crossed path with, I am so very thankful. Because I think, again, I have learned so much from the people I've come in contact that it continues to make me a better person, a more informed person just from hearing your story, and, better for myself, but also like just better for all of you, better for our team. So I'm very, very thankful. And I just want to say, thanks for listening, too. So, yeah, thank you, Kimberly. And also this is an invitation for, Farmer Jim, thanks for being here. I feel so blessed to know the people that I've come in contact with through many, many of our ways. Hi, Becky. Becky says, thank you. You have so much to share. Hopefully more and more clinicians will find out what you do. I'm just going to keep sharing. I'm going to share research more than my story. I will tell you that I've never sweated so profusely in my life. This is not something I'm going to do on the regular. But it will propel me to keep advocating. And I'm going to keep inviting you, the clinicians, come join us, come learn with us, come join our community in Brain Bites. And for people living with misunderstood diagnoses like our zebra conditions, we have a membership that is on sale through tonight. And I would love for you to be a part of it. For other folks, we have a membership for people with Parkinson's disease. We have a membership for people with functional neurologic disorders. And we have classes online for people with dystonia. All of these created so that you, as Colby said, Colby, I think you were quoting me. Thank you for writing it down. I know what I need so I can do what I love. So that is what our education classes are about. And these memberships are about, is really getting the resources and education that you need so that you could do what you love. Like literally, Colby, I just want to screenshot that. I know I said it, but I don't think I said that before. I want to remember that. I took a screenshot. Thank you, Colby, for scribing it for me. So thank you again very, very much for listening to my story and, for the space to share it and for the continued support of the mission of Reactive and all of our education for clinicians as well as people living with neurologic disorders and chronic disease. Now you know why. Now you know why I'm so passionate about this, and I just truly, truly love what I do. So I'm going to sign off here and just thank you again so, so much. If you are a person with a zebra condition who's going at it alone, do look at our zebra membership. And again, it is open through tonight. It's February 11th at that special rate too. And Sophie Charlie Izzy says, it's so great to hear your story and to be inspired by someone who gets it and understands us. Thank you for your constant kindness and generosity of time with everyone. Yeah, thank you. Oh, Anita, thank you for sharing and making a movement. We're going to make a movement. I love that. I love that, Anita. All right. Thank you so much for being here. And stay tuned. I'm heading to professional conference this week at CSM and presenting. So I'll be sharing all that I'm learning and doing. I can't wait to share it with you. And I'll see you all soon.